Hey, this is Stevie Rachelle from Tuff, and may the rock be with you. Yeah.
Well, welcome to May the Rock Be With You, Stevie. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
What is the name of the show again?
It's called May the Rock Be With You
May the rock be with you. Okay, and where are you based out of?
in Sydney.
You're in Sydney.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So I'll be seeing you in a couple of weeks.
So you'll be at the Saturday show.
Yes. Yep. Yes.
Cool.
I can't wait. And GLAM Fest, of course, it's the first time it's ever happening in Australia. Can you tell us what people can expect from a Tuff set in 2023?
Well, I mean, obviously the main record that most people know is our debut, What Comes Around Goes Around. But the way the set's set up, we're heavily on the first record, 4 or 5 songs. We play one or two off of Fist First Religious Fix, which was technically our sophomore release. We play one off of a record called The History of Tuff.
Hmm.
I mean, the song was American Hair Band, which came out in 2001.
Yep.
And then we play something off an old compilation we have called The Glam Years, which is a lot of our demos that we did. We did demos at Sound City in 1988.
Well,
We did demos at Sunset Sound in 1989. And that's like Summertime Goodbye, Sinner Street, Round 'em Up, originally demoed Good Guys Wear Black. So technically we're going to play music from 4 different releases, but it's heavily on What Comes Around Goes Around, which most people like, and that's that's the favorite record.
excellent. Good to hear. I was wondering if American Hairband was going to get a go, and I'm very happy because I love that song.
Yeah, I mean that's it's weird that it came way after the fact. It was recorded in 2000, late 2000, early 2001 when I reformed the band.
Hmm.
And the idea of that song was basically to continue where All New Generation left off. And if anybody's familiar with the song All New Generation, that's that song talks about the generations of music, starting with Elvis Presley and Little Richard and Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly. Then it goes to the next stage, which is, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, the Who, the Doors, Aerosmith, old Van Halen. The lyric quotes old Van Halen because for anybody that knew music at one point, it was Van Halen. And then the new Van Halen was with Sammy, and people used to say, oh, I like old Van Halen, meaning the David Lee Roth era.
Yep.
And then we ushered into the Cooper Kiss, the Oz and Motley, Poison, Axl, John Bon Jovi, Skid Row is the Youth Gone Wild. That was 1990. So when I did American Hair Band, I was trying to think of an idea that I wanted to do to pick up where that left off. And at some point, I came up with this idea to do this mashup. And it was basically saluting everything that we were a part of or we stood for in the 80s, which became the antithesis of everything in the music industry in the 90s.
Yep.
Lame, horrible, no thanks, go away, done, over. Glam got a bad rap. The Sunset Strip got a bad rap. Hair bands got a bad rap. And it became kind of the new disco. When disco went out in the 70s and in the early 80s, everybody said disco sucks. And that's kind of what happened with our genre of music. So when I reformed the band, launching in Y2K, the year 2000, when everything kind of came full circle, that was to everybody who didn't want to support it and believe, and that was me flying the flag for the American Hair Band.
Absolutely brilliant. And I still fly the flag. I think it's still probably the best music there has been, is, and ever will be.
Awesome. Thank you.
Now, I want to talk about that era, if you like. Who stands out for you as the most influential on the scene at that time?
You mean when I was on the scene or before I got to the scene?
Oh, no, when you were on the scene.
Well, what's really crazy to think now is I moved to Los Angeles to audition for Tuff.
All right.
Tuff was from Phoenix and moved to LA in 1986 with their original singer, who then departed with them at the end of 86, early 87. So when I got there, what's crazy to think is Motley Crue and Rat were only a couple years removed from being a local band. I mean, Motley started in 81. Too Fast came out late 81. Shout at the Devil was out in '83.
Mm.
Soon after was, Out of the Cellar. And then obviously had Dawkins and Wasp and Black and Blue and Keel and Armored Saint and all these metal bands, obviously, and they were all following in the footsteps of the great Van Halen, preceded by the Doors. But by the time I got there, Poison had just exploded.
Mm.
So I got there June of '87. Their Talk Dirty to Me single wasn't even a year old, like 6, 8 months. And they went from the local band that got a small little record deal, recorded it in 10 days and threw it out. And suddenly it was triple platinum. So Poison was without a doubt the band that everybody was like, oh my God, they were playing the Troubadour 6 months ago. And now they're opening up for David Lee Roth and Kiss and Rat, in arenas. So, Poison was without a doubt the band that had the most buzz and had probably impacted the scene the most in '86, '87, '88. And again, that's only a handful of years removed from Motley Crue and Rat.
True.
And then at the time that I was there, when I walked the Sunset Strip for one of my first weekends, I saw this guy standing by Gazzari's and everybody was talking to him. Everybody's huddled around him. I had no idea who it was. I just knew that he had a deep voice. And everyone's like, dude, the record's great. He's like, thank you very much. And I was like, who's that? And they're like, that's Axl from Guns N' Roses.
Wow.
Their record had not even come out yet. So it was only like the mixes and advances that were circulating. So this guy with this deep voice, they're like, that's Axl from Guns N' Roses. I mean, fast forward, bar none, after, Mick Jagger and a few of those, I mean, he's without a doubt the premier rock and roll frontman of the last 35, 40 years. So Guns N' Roses, soon after that, late '80s and obviously into the early '90s, suddenly took over the throne as From Hollywood, California, that Welcome to the Jungle video. This is the band that everyone was like, be like them, look like them, enjoy them, go to see them, hang out with them. Everything related to Guns N' Roses, which was obviously a little bit more raw than Poison's polished Fallen Angel, Nothing But a Good Time, Unskinny Bop, and Guns N' Roses came in with this dirtier, sleazier, edgier thing. But, Motley, Poison, Guns N' Roses. Nice. Those are the three kings of the Sunset Strip from the '80s, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely outstanding. Now, back to Glam Fest, because it is the first year, we've got a great lineup there. It's sort of eclectic. There's a couple of bands in there that are going to, really show some people what they can do. Is anyone you're pumped to check out?
Say that again.
Anyone that you're pumped or excited to see on this bill that you haven't seen?
Well, I've never seen Eclipse from Sweden, but they were on some of the Monsters of Rock cruises that I was on, and I heard nothing but, I mean, if there's 40 bands on those cruises, if there was 3 bands that everybody talked about, Eclipse was one of them.
Nice.
So I didn't see them. I did listen a little bit online, so I've never seen them live, but I know that everybody that saw them really liked them. Obviously, Wednesday 13 isn't essentially a glam guy, but he loves glam. He grew up listening to and looking at Metal Edge, and he loved, and he said it in interviews. He's, and he's a friend of mine, but he likes Tuff, he likes Pretty Boy Floyd, he likes Faster Pussycat. He liked all those kind of bands.
Yeah.
So it's a good mix. You've got 3 bands from the Sunset Strip. Enuff Z'Nuff is from Chicago, which, Wednesday 13 is originally from the East Coast, the Carolinas. And Eclipse is Swedish, but it's a good mix, and I'm excited to see everybody at some point. I mean, everybody on there. I mean, I've seen all the bands many times. We've played together many times over decades. I've known those guys in the various formations and lineup changes along the way and whatever. But I'm most excited just to come to Australia with my band and play for everybody.
Yeah. Who's in the band at the moment?
Of course, me singing.
Oh, you're cool.
Original bassist and co-founder Todd Chason is the bass player. And for the record, Todd did leave the band, at the end of '91, early '92. And then he went off and did a whole nother project and a whole nother style of music with a couple of guys. And then in the mid 2000s, 2006, 7, 8, I was pushing his buttons. Hey, dude, why don't you play some shows with me again? You know? And eventually he came back. So he's been back in the fold for 15 years. The drummer we have is a guy named, also his name is Todd. And that became a problem at one point. So we just call him T, you know, because
Yep.
if I said, hey, Todd, they both looked at me and I'm like, not you, you. So we at one point said, okay, you're going to be Todd and you need to alter your name. And he's like, I'll just be T, you know? So T is our drummer. He's been playing with us off and on for 20 years. And the irony here is that when Todd Chase left Tuff to form a new project in the 90s, a much heavier project, T was his drummer.
Oh, nice.
So they've also worked together for 30 plus years. And Billy Morris plays lead guitar with
Oh,
us.
Billy. You
Not
played in
sure
Warrant.
if you know who Billy is. Yeah, but Billy played in Warrant for many years. When Joey Allen left in the mid-late 90s, they brought him in. And he's from Ohio. So him and Janie Lane had a very good connection. They were buddies from Ohio. And then whenever Janie was out of Warrant or would leave Warrant or even do solo shows, he always brought Billy. So Billy and Janie were very close. And I've known Billy forever. His band even opened up for Tuff 30 some years ago when we'd go through Ohio. And so the first time I played with Billy was probably I think New Year's Eve of 2004. So it's been almost 20 years that he's been playing with Tuff. Billy's awesome.
Awesome. I thought he might have been. I saw something about that because Warrant is one of my favorite bands of all time.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. I'll get to see Billy Morris on stage. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. He's great.
Nice. Now, you have been to Australia once before. Do you have a memory of that last trip down here?
I do. As a matter of fact, a promoter by the name of Milan Cernovic, I think is his last name, he brought me down and the Dead Things opened for me. You probably know who Jules is.
I'm a friend of Jules. Yeah.
And I had met Jules before that. I had met him in Los Angeles. I don't know if they came here to play or they were just hanging out, but I had met Jules previously in LA, probably about 20 years ago. And then when I went down there, they said, hey, we're going to bring you down. The Dead Things will open. And then the band or part of the band became my backup band. So I came in a couple days early and got together with the guys in rehearsal, and they kind of learned a Tuff set and a couple of, this and that. So then I had the opportunity to go through some of the music with them. And then when we did the shows, Jules and the Dead, it was local bands, then Jules and the Dead Things played, and then a couple of the Dead Things guys. And I think it was a different drummer maybe or bassist. That was my band. And played in Melbourne, not Melbourne, right?
Yeah,
it's Melbourne.
Thank you. Yep.
And played in Sydney, had a great time, loved it. And one of my fun memories was I'm in the car, the promoter and his partner picked me up at the airport. I'm in the car, we're on the freeway, maybe 10 minutes. And I said, so am I going to see like a kangaroo at any point? And they're laughing their head off. Like, I don't know what I thought. He's like, oh yeah, they're going to be at the 7-Eleven on the corner here. So they're having fun with me. And then Milan at some point said, tomorrow my sister's going to take you to lunch. And she took me to a zoo.
Cool.
Took me to the zoo, took me to the kangaroo enclosure, said, there's a kangaroo. Yeah. Can we go now? So we had a good time. We had a good laugh. But yeah, I mean, I honestly, I mean, anybody and everybody that's not from Australia, when you think of Australia, you think of a kangaroo.
Yeah.
You just do. And so yeah, I was asking about kangaroos and they were having a laugh riot, making fun of me. And then 2 days later, they took me to a zoo. They literally walked me in, said, there's your kangaroo. Now let's go.
I love that. Well, hopefully you can see another one this time. Nice. Now, new music wise, you've been doing stuff, I believe, with Shameless and a couple other things. What else are you involved with at the moment?
Well, the Shameless band, as you just noted, that is from Germany, based in Munich. And I've worked with Alex, the bass player. That's his project for about 25 years. And in the 25 years, we've done 8 studio records. So, but, and the fans of the band would know this, but Shameless is not really always one lineup. It's always Alex and his guitarist BC. They're kind of like the Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, if you will. And they've always had a variation of singers. So on every record, I've sang 2 or 3 songs minimal, sometimes 4 or 5. Steve from Pretty Boy Floyd has usually been involved. He'd sing 3 or 4. And then Alex would have John Corabi sing a song, or Phil Lewis might sing a track, or Cherie Curry from the Runaways at some point did a couple of songs. So Alex kind of has his band, but the lineup is usually alters with singers, and then like some guest guitarists. Tracy Guns might play some leads. Bruce Kulick, Eric Singer of Kiss has played drums on a couple tracks. Robert Sweet of Stripers played drums.
Nice.
So it's kind of like an all-star thing. But a lot of times I find myself, I'd go to Europe, to Germany to tour with Shameless, and it would be booked as, or billed as, Shameless featuring Stevie, Rachelle of Tuff.
Right.
And for that set, depending on how far along we were, we'd go, okay, let's play these 2 songs off this record, this one, this one, this one. I'd usually pick the songs that I sang. Then we'd pick 5 or 6 Tuff songs and put it into the set. So it'd kind of be a mix of Shameless and Tuff. And then there was tours that Shameless did without me that featured Steve from Pretty Boy Floyd. And they'd do the same thing there, only they'd play the songs he sang off the Shameless records and then some Pretty Boy Floyd songs. Nice. So always fun, you know, been all over Europe with that a lot. I also did something similar with a band from Brazil a couple years ago called Tales from the Porn. Which sounds like Tales from the Crypt. And the record, you know, they contacted me and basically said something to that effect in a message on Facebook. They said, we want to do something like Shameless did. We're all here, but we want to use American singers. So we demoed a couple of ideas, and one song turned to 2, turned to 4, turned to a full record. And that came out about 4 or 5 years ago. The record was great. It was very well received. And I've since been to Brazil and played with them in multiple cities, you know, several times. And I'd also been there with Tuff and as, you know, a solo artist as well. So love to play Brazil, love Europe, and can't be more thrilled to return to Australia for the second time, you know?
Exactly.
With my band.
Yeah, of course. Any chance of another Tales from the Porn album coming?
Yeah, you know, people keep asking me that, but it's really Andy's project. Andy's son is the lead guitarist, and he's kind of like the Alex of if you will, of Tales from the Porn. And he's one of those guys that's doing 10 things. You know, this project, this band, this side business, clothing, internet, whatever. So he's a mover and a shaker that way. I don't see it being a full-time gig for him, and it's not for me either, but I like that. I like that variation in my life, that I'm doing Tuff stuff sometimes, and occasionally a Shameless record or a Shameless tour, and a little bit of this with this band from Brazil, and then the rest of things, you know, being a father and watching football and going to the gym, you know.
There you go. Nothing wrong with that at all. So you've done a lot. And like you said, you've been around the world and done all sorts of things. What's left for you to do that you haven't yet had the chance to do that you'd like to do?
Thailand.
Really?
And I'm doing that in February. I've been to 29 countries, played in almost all of them. A couple I just went, you know, vacationing with my kids and their mother. But I'm going to Thailand in February for 10 days, and I will be playing in Bangkok on February 17th at the Rock Pub. So I'm really excited to go to Thailand. Out of all the places we went, never been to anywhere in Asia.
Oh, wow.
Haven't been to Japan.
Yeah.
Which, you know, that's the old age. That's a famous saying from way back. We're big in Japan, you know. Yep. There's, you know, I mean, that was the Runaways. The Runaways, I think, were gold in Japan, or, you know, had a big hit record, but they couldn't, they didn't have the success in the United States. But so I'm excited to go to Thailand, and at some point, Japan is a bucket list for Tuff. I mean, for me to go just as a tourist to see it, but experience the culture, the nightlife, the food, all that. but I'd love to play Japan. That's one place I haven't been, and Thailand is another, but that's going to get checked off the list here in about a month.
Lovely. Now, on a personal note, I just want to say thank you, because my site wouldn't exist without the likes of Metal Sludge. So,
Oh,
yeah, totally. Like me and my friend who started the site back in 2007 loved it. We're obsessed with it. Wanted to do something that we thought wasn't being done, and we were born because of it. So, thank you very much.
dude, that's awesome to hear that, because just like my band, I've gone all over the world, and I played in Romania, I played in Hungary, I played in the Czech Republic, Austria,
Mm.
you know, all these little places. Well, not little, but odd countries that you wouldn't think, this kind of music would exist in, or I'd have the opportunity to play there. So going and doing that, it's thrilling. And going into these places, every gig that I do, everywhere I go, somebody comes up to me and goes, dude, I love Metal Sludge. And that's another great feeling, because, in the summer of 1998, 25 years ago, it was an idea.
Mm.
And the internet, as we know, barely existed at that point. And to the masses, it didn't exist. There was no social networks, or social media. There was no Facebook, no MySpace, no Twitter, no
Mm.
YouTube, no Instagram, no TikTok, none of it. So I don't know what made me think of it, but the internet was being talked about, and at some point I just, I realized that magazine press wasn't working as well, and most of the magazine press in the '90s was covering Korn and Power Man 5000 and Marilyn Manson and Nine Inch Nails and
Yep.
All kinds of stuff that nobody would give Tuff the time of day. So at some point I just said, I want to create my own outlet, this website, since that's going to be the future, and I didn't really know it was going to be the future. I just kind of thought that. Took a wild guess. And we just started blogging about hair bands and 80s. And aside from including my band in there, we also included some of the others, the obscure stuff. Instead of just interviewing Warren or talking about Skid Row or Motley Crue or Poison, we wanted to talk about the Sleaze Bees
Mm.
and Johnny Crash and Shotgun Messiah and all the, Rhino Bucket and all the obscure stuff that people were like, yeah, that was a great record. How come they didn't get more play than Headbangers Ball on a Saturday night? So
Yeah.
when somebody tells me they've been influenced by or enjoyed Metal Sludge, it's a great feeling, and thanks for that.
No worries at all. I appreciate that. Now, lastly, let's look ahead to the future. I want you to finish this sentence for me. In 2023, Stevie Rachelle will.
God, simple. Enjoy life every day it's afforded to me. And I say that because all of us, and when I say all, the entire planet lost about 2 years of our life.
Yeah.
When this pandemic thing hit, and then suddenly it was like, can't travel there.
Mm.
Can't go here. I mean, in the United States, and not every country or not every state was the same, but out in Los Angeles, restaurants closed, bars closed.
Yep.
You couldn't walk into a coffee shop. At some point when Starbucks did open, they would make the coffee and then hand it out the door to you, or everything was through the drive-through. You couldn't go dine in a restaurant. So aside from traveling with my band, even though it's part-time, I love it. I cherish that. I cherish the moments, that we'll get on a plane for a long ride and probably be uncomfortable at some point going, God, I need to get off this plane. But when we land, a week from Tuesday morning.
Yep.
Or is that a week from this morning? Actually, is today Tuesday? I think it is. We'll be landing in Brisbane, and then we're going to get to see Brisbane and Adelaide and play these cities and meet fans. And so that, in addition to going on a vacation with my kids or their mother and saying, okay, let's go visit here, go visit there, and even going to a restaurant with a friend. So 2023 is here. It's going to be a full year, I hope, of good for everybody. And the restrictions that we were having to follow for a long period kind of it clamped everybody's life down.
Yep.
we were at basically a stop sign. Wait. We
Yeah.
couldn't do anything.
Yep.
So, 2023, I'm embracing it. We're 2-3 weeks in, and what a better way to kick it off than to come to Australia to play Glam Fest.
Sounds good to me. Stevie, thank you so much for your time, man. Absolute pleasure to talk to you, and I can't wait to see you in Sydney in a couple of weeks. All right, mate. Good to
Thank
see
you,
you.
sir.
Thanks,
Okay.
mate. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.